Businesses thrive by knowing customer insights because today's insights are tomorrow's facts. At iResearch, we live and breathe insights. And despite searching high and low, we were unable to find a customer insights podcast that answers one of the most important questions in business. Why do customers do what they do? So we launched one. Hi, I'm your host, Darshan Mehta. On this episode, I'm joined by Dustin Elliott. He is a senior brand manager at the Vitamin Shoppe. He has over 2 decades of experience in the health and wellness industry. He is responsible for branding strategy, product development, business management, customer and market analysis. Dustin has also worked as a media representative at Nutriforce Nutrition, and he is also a holder of a bachelor degree in exercise and physiology from Florida International University. Dustin, welcome. Looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start off like I normally do. Tell me about the aha moments that have gotten you to, what was you interested to get a degree in physiology to begin with?
Yeah, it was actually through playing sports. I had it was odd idea at the time, but having a high GPA as a minority coming out of high school, they were recruiting me for the accounting and business field, where there was a shortage of minorities in the United States. So oddly enough, I was actually on my way to be an accountant very early on. And very early on, I learned that high level math wasn't my thing. But through playing football, I actually developed a love for strength and conditioning. And I didn't know it at the time, but my acumen for strategy was one of the reasons why I love strength and conditioning. The idea of taking an athlete or taking an athlete's shortcoming and molding it through nutrition, through obviously strength and conditioning, which was the primary focus, to get them to improve. So that's how I found my way to exercise physiology as a degree.
Interesting. So was there an aha moment that led you on this path at that time when you discovered it?
Going beyond exercise physiology into what I do now, I got into exercise science, absolutely loved it, absolutely loved the coursework, the internships. But I was actually working at a nutrition store across the street from my school. And I became sort of like the go-to guy amongst my peers in terms of what supplements to use. Because I was working at the store, I started competing in natural bodybuilding. And at one point, there was the CEO of a contract manufacturing company, Nutriforce. And actually, when I worked with Nutriforce, I was doing multiple things there, mostly formulation work, as well as sort of doing interviews for Nutriforce Nutrition. That's where the media representative part came in, doing interviews with athletes for the brands that they worked with and doing interviews with athletes for the Betancourt Nutrition brand. But sort of getting back to that aha moment, I was actually in the house of the contract manufacturer, the CEO of the contract manufacturer, unbeknownst to me, didn't know what he did, but he had just purchased a sports nutrition brand. And he saw that, I was, young guy, bodybuilder. I guess he was expecting to get sort of the, average Joe's bodybuilder or weightlifter's view of this brand that he purchased. What he didn't expect, because I was working at this nutrition store and the owner of the store, Kathy, she was really big on the business side of the supplements. It's not just enough. It's about upselling people. It's about what brands are right for what type of people. And so because of this training that I received from her, I gave him sort of a business rundown of the brand, where it sits on the shelf, what competitor brands are like, what ingredients it should be using based on the target customer. And sort of took him back. It wasn't what he expected to hear from just some collegiate weightlifter. So he actually had me on his mind for a couple of years, ended up turning around and hiring me to work for this brand he just bought, and started from the ground up. That was sort of like my aha moment. I thought I was going to do strength and conditioning. I did love supplements, but after getting an introduction with the CEO and sort of showing him what I knew, he turned my career into the supplements direction.
So it sounds like your aha moment led to an aha moment for him as well.
Yeah, definitely did.
So tell me about these interviews. I have a feeling you learn a lot doing these interviews. And what are some of the key takeaways you learned from interviewing all these athletes?
Yeah, so for me, it was a lot of like the athletes in the fitness space for the Betancourt Nutrition brand. And then I interviewed a lot of athletes in the CrossFit space for a brand that was a CrossFit brand at the time. And one thing that I sort of noticed is it's obviously becoming less and less niche every day, CrossFit, as it starts to grow. But we were starting this CrossFit brand when CrossFit was just emerging from sort of like this niche space. It had this huge community. And I found that bodybuilding, like CrossFit, these athletes found their way to the sport in a similar way that I found my way to natural bodybuilding, in that you have very competitive people who did not go pro or didn't have a professional category for where their interests lie. And these sports started to fill the void for those people. And, it just shows how, a lot of people who get into the health and fitness space are still competitive. They're still striving to be the best. They're still looking to improve like an athlete would. But you know what? Most of their day isn't the day of a pro athlete. But if they could, they would still love to optimize their life. And I learned that these athletes, just like a lot of our high level customers, our biggest shoppers in this industry, they're all looking to optimize all the time, even if they're not trying to be a pro athlete. They're trying to be the best at whatever it is that they do. And that's what I learned from interviewing these athletes from all these fields is, they may not have been in a pro sport that most people recognize, but their competitive lifestyles led them to these niche sports where they're just trying to get better every single day.
So I'm curious. You talked to a lot of athletes and about nutrition and performance optimization. I'm curious. Do you still find there's three things that a lot of people have misconceptions of when it comes to nutrition, supplements, and actually performance enhancement?
In terms of misconceptions, I think one thing that people still when they think about performance enhancement, one thing is definitely they associate it with I would say a detriment to their health. Some people do. I think one of the things that has sort of progressed this thinking is the view of creatine, for example. Creatine now is widely recognized by a lot of people of not being detrimental to your health, right? And it's a performance enhancing supplement. And, it was just a decade ago, you'll find tons of stuff where people were looking, well, this hurt my kidneys, is creatine steroids. And although, a lot of the myths have been busted for creatine, when it comes to performance enhancement in general, I think a lot of people aren't properly associating it with the ability to improve your health. People tend to separate performance enhancement from health. And I think as news around creatine grows, I think maybe that'll bridge the gap that, as you get older, enhancing your performance, or at least attempting to, is the pathway to better health. If you are trying to get better at improving your squat stance or improving your 1 mile run time, you are improving your longevity. As you get older, performance enhancement and longevity sort of go hand in hand, or at least striving to do so. So I think that's one big misconception within that realm. And then following up with that, another big misconception in that realm is the use of pharmaceuticals when it comes to performance enhancement. I think a lot of people are obviously turned off by what they hear in the news with this athlete was on steroids and this athlete was on that drug. And unfortunately, this negative press has sort of caused people to not see the in between, which are things like hormone replacement therapy, for example, for men, which, after you're 40, testosterone significantly declines, and the age related negative effects with that also tends to increase. And so something as simple as hormone replacement therapy, it's like the new creatine, especially for men, where there are all these benefits, there are all these improvements to lifestyle and longevity, even if you're not an athlete, even if you don't consider yourself to be physically active. But what happens is that the negative press around, heavy drug use and drug abuse is sort of masking the benefits of TRT because people have a hard time separating the two. So I would say that's another big misconception in the performance enhancement realm. One, of course, being enhancing performance isn't for everyone, which it is, promotes longevity. And then two, the pharmaceuticals involved, which have long-term health benefits, which people can't see because they associate it with drug use. And as far as a third major misconception, maybe that I see in the performance enhancing realm is around injuries. So CrossFit is a good example. people look at CrossFit, they just see injured people training all the time. They see reels of people dropping weights on their head and things like that. They hear about pro bodybuilders, like going away from CrossFit now, pro bodybuilders tearing a bicep or tearing a pec or something in the gym. And I think functional training is a word that CrossFit started to bring into this space, but then, it went to the wayside once the sports aspect of CrossFit overtook the functional training portion of it. And I think getting back to the idea that going to the gym, exercising, or not even the gym, I mean, whatever gets you moving is right for you when it comes to human health. So whatever it is that you do that gets you moving, you don't necessarily have to take it to an extreme. Just do something, get your body to move. And a lot of people are associating, intense exercise with just injury, and they're avoiding it. They don't see themselves as a professional athlete. But the reality is, it improves functionality. Anything that improves functionality is good for longevity. So I would say that's probably another aspect of performance enhancement that people overlook is, hey, you don't have to go all in and be hardcore, just doing a little bit is better for longevity.
I was going to ask you, it seems like a lot of times with performance enhancement, I mean, these are people that are obviously driven, right, already, that they may just push it too much and overdo it as opposed to striking a balance. Is that what you're seeing is probably one of the biggest problems with people running into issues?
Yeah, I think for the most part, when it comes to anything that's good, people will abuse it, and then that'll turn off the masses when it comes to the benefits. That's the reason why ingredients like creatine probably took so long. Back in the day, people had the loading phase for creatine, where they're trying to reach saturation levels, and so there are all these recommendations to use 2, 3, 4 scoops. A 5 gram serving size, obviously. So I'm saying basically they were told to use 5 to 15 to 20 grams in the first few days of creatine use. And, that turns off the average customer. When you're using that much creatine, you're going to the bathroom frequently. You're suffering from bloating and gastric distress. And you have all these myths that come out from creatine because of this extreme use. And I keep coming back to creatine as an example because I think it's one of the highlights of the industry and how much this super supplement has sort of improved. People have improved their view of the supplement. So that's the reason why I keep using it as an example for this broader discussion. But again, getting back to the broader discussion, I think that when it comes to lifting weights, when it comes to doing CrossFit, when it comes to using supplements, I think that small percentage of people that abuse these things due to their competitive nature are sort of blinding the masses to the benefits to moderation when it comes to all these things.
We've been using the word performance enhancement, but can you define it for me? What exactly is it? Because I have a feeling sometimes people might be misusing it or have different meanings. So what's your definition of performance enhancement?
For me, performance enhancement, kind of going back to our discussion about the three things, I have this broader definition of performance enhancement for me personally, where it's self-improvement, right? And that's a big far cry from a performance enhancement and strength and conditioning, where it's self-improvement, but for elite athletes, right? And so that takes on a very different view in terms of, okay, if you're an elite athlete to self-improve, you have to like almost kill yourself within cycles. Obviously, you're going to periodize. You can't kill yourself every day to get better. Rest is just as important as the training. But the training itself, you're pushing yourself to the limit to improve. So if you're an elite athlete, performance enhancement, that's a big word because that basically means, you've got to start writing down your daily goals and you got to start meeting them and you got to start exceeding them. And you're really pushing yourself. But then performance enhancement for everyone, it's the same thing. It's self-improvement. You still have your goals you need to reach. Maybe you want to keep a notebook of where you are and maybe track your progress. And it doesn't have to look as extreme as it does for a professional athlete. But I think it's still very important when it comes to the human body.
So you said performance enhancement leads to longevity. So is it what you're saying? Exercise alone, movement alone, you actually have to keep improving notch by notch. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's striving to improve, right? Because you're not going to improve with age, right? You're going to always suffer declines, no matter how good your regimen is. but it's the striving part that's important. So I would say it's more not actually improving, but it's the act of attempting to do so. So, actually, keeping a regimen of what you want to do on a daily basis that you enjoy doing. Again, it's about what you enjoy doing that gets you to move, but creating that daily regimen, sticking to it, attempting to track your numbers, make progress, make improvements. And then as you age and as you decline, you'll retain more functionality than someone who, just staying in the same place, doing the same thing every day, or someone who does nothing, right? Your control group who is sedentary. So I think it's striving to improve. Whereas, once you start to hit a certain age, actual improvement is not always going to be possible.
So when you're talking longevity, you're talking health span or lifespan?
Talking both, actually. So, health span obviously is a very important part of it, the ability to move, to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining as you age. But then lifespan as well. This probably plays more into the nutritional and rest and supplement aspect of it. But when you look at those things, especially as they pertain to blue zones, for anyone who has expertise in that area, you can see that people who live a different lifestyle, a healthier lifestyle, they can improve their lifespan as well.
So I'm curious, have you found out some aha moments that you've had that say, hey, these are the things I used to do, but now that I do this, I really have seen a huge improvement in my health? Because obviously you're well experienced and knowledge about this, but I'm curious what aha moments you still had, in your on your path.
So for me, a big part of it, a couple of years ago, actually 3 years ago now, I finished chemo lymphoma in June of 2021. And sort of changed my view on health and longevity, as well as just the questions that I get from my peers. So I mentioned previously, I was in a fraternity in college, so big group of men always asking me fitness questions, and I was sort of the leader in that realm. But now at my age, everyone's getting married, everyone's having kids, and everyone's being faced with their mortality. You go from being the 20-something-year-old who feels like they can't die and you're doing crazy stuff. And then the moment that you have a child, your mortality hits you in the face and you're worried about your longevity, your health, and not for you. It's all for your child and for your family, right? Those things come first. So now I'm getting the longevity questions and the health questions from my friends. And I was faced with it personally, having to go through, chemo, which I was very blessed. It was only 7 months. So many other people, in that waiting room had been there for a year, 2 years, had been fighting for the long haul. So I got off easy with 7 months, relatively speaking. Hodgkin's lymphoma, very easy to deal with here in the United States. They have a regimen for it. If you're young, they have very great outcomes. So, but even then, coming out of it, one of the big things that changed for me was digestion, gut health. I've been huge on the gut biome lately. For the first times, I was faced with, issues with acid reflux, digestion, my intestines not being able to move things I was digesting through the digestive tract, not being able to go to the bathroom when I wanted to, and then how that impacted my health and how I felt during the day. So since then, I've been on this huge digestive kick when it comes to the gut brain axis, improving the gut biome, learning about how, our guts aren't completely mapped, just like our brains aren't, the connection between the gut biome and human health. I'm a huge fiber guy. It used to be when I was younger, I was counting how much protein I was having per day like crazy. If I fell short, I got to get, more protein. And now that I'm older, I'm sort of counting my fiber. Am I getting adequate fruits and vegetables? I missed a portion or serving of greens today. I fix a giant fruit smoothie after I work out. I'm interested in fibers and fiber technology and digestive health from a lot of supplement companies, not supplement companies, but raw material vendors that I meet. And so that's one of the big things that's changed for me is how the gut impacts not only, performance, where you have a lot of researchers who are looking at the gut biomes of athletes, but how it impacts human health overall. That was the big turn for me, and something that's a big area of focus for me now for longevity.
I agree. I've actually been working with a couple of teams on the gut biome. And I think we're just at the very beginning stages of truly understanding, at a deeper level and how it can really help. And I think once we know it, it's probably, I think, going to transform healthcare as well. Not to mention nutrition alone, but it's a very interesting area. And combined with that, I mean, I'm amazed at how many people actually have never been trained on nutrition. You would think that we would get proper nutrition training at a young age at school or in college, but very few people really know that. And how much of would you say being healthy and thriving is nutrition versus exercise?
That's a good question because obviously I've always been a big exercise guy, but I got to be honest with you, more and more I feel like nutrition and sleep is such a larger portion of it. I mean, the amount of training that you actually need for self-improvement is nowhere near as big as people think. When you're looking at recommendations that are being given now just for small improvements in human health, a sedentary person can walk for 30 minutes, maybe three, four, 5 times a week, and that'll improve their health. 30 minutes of walking, a few times a week can improve the health of someone who's sedentary. And obviously, if you're trained, for self-improvement, you're going to need more than that, as we alluded to earlier. But just getting up and moving is the start of it. And so when it really comes to turning the tide for your health and for your longevity, well, training, the actual time you can spend training for improvements is such a tiny portion of your time, such a tiny portion of the week. You're going to spend a lot more time sleeping and you're going to spend, a lot more time eating. And so I feel like those take on larger portions of what it is to be healthy. I mentioned the blue zones earlier. When it comes to the blue zones and longevity, there's no measure of how often, those people are exercising. It's about what they're eating, what they're doing, what their lifestyle looks like. So I would definitely say nutrition. Hate to throw a percentage at it without deep analysis, but just for the sake of argument, I could easily say something like training, it's important, but I'd say maybe it's like 20% of it. And then sleep, I'd probably give like another 30, 40% of it. And then the rest, the other 50% or 40 or 50% would probably be the nutritional part. We speak about the gut biome. It's affected by what you eat. And, there's also a lot of things that are detrimental to your health that come through consumption, right? So your nutrition you can't out train your nutrition and you can destroy your health faster through poor nutrition than anything else. So yeah, I would say nutrition would take the largest percentage of it.
Yeah, and I agree about the sleep. I think when people are seeking the fountain of youth, it's actually right there is sleep. I mean, that's like the fountain of youth, and combine that with nutrition, and it's all related, right? I mean, it's all not like just one or the other. It's related then to your gut biome. It's related to your appetite control and all of that stuff. But ultimately, nutrition is certainly is a big factor, and certainly sleep. What are you seeing now in terms of supplements industry, vitamin industry that you think are some new interesting developments that you're hoping might even help people further down the line?
Yeah, one of the biggest developments I think that I'm starting to see is I alluded to it earlier with the TRT therapy, but obviously it's bigger than that with anti-aging clinics, beauty clinics, and just the men's health clinics. When it comes to our customers and our share of wallet, those spaces are impacting it more and more. We're seeing the pharmaceutical industry with Ozempic and other blood sugar control medications start to enter into the health and wellness space. We're seeing the weight management category in the industry as a whole shrink, even though obesity is a top disease in the United States and weight management is the number one need state when you survey any population of customers. But the weight management set is shrinking, which means that, these clinics and these drugs are definitely having an impact on our customer share of wallet and where our customers are seeing solutions. And, some of these biggest clinics you walk in, they have their own private label supplements. So I see that as one of the biggest trends sort of impacting all of us is, okay, more of these clinics are starting to cross over into the space. And, any retailers or any supplement companies, and when it comes to the top customers, because obviously these services are more expensive. So I'm just speaking to the households that have a larger, share of the wallet. when it comes to these customers that have, larger spend within the space, in the next few years, a lot of companies are going to have to start making decisions about where they fit in the space, along with these clinics. More and more people are deferring to them. Just speaking for going back to the men's health space personally, since that's what I face a lot. I mentioned before with my friends, they go to the doctor and they, are having issues with sleep, with fatigue, all the sleep that they lose raising their child. Research shows that estrogen increases, testosterone decreases with a lot of men when they're starting families like this. And they go through all these physiological changes. Age doesn't help. And then they go to their doctor, and their doctor says, oh, your testosterone is 350 nanograms per deciliter. And the minimum for TRT and hormone replacement therapy is 280. So the doctor doesn't do anything for them, but they feel terrible because most men, and I just say most because, we have these standards in these ranges, but numbers, they can be different. What's right for everyone. But most men feel great once they're at least over 500 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone. And a lot of doctors, won't prescribe you anything if you're above 280 or above 300. And so they're turning to these clinics, which are about optimization. They're not about, okay, once you go below this number and you're dying, I'm going to prescribe you something. They're about what does it take to make you feel good and live longer. And so as a result, people who can afford to are sort of turning to this. So I think that's one area that I see coming forward in the future in this industry is the emergence of these clinics and the people who can afford it turning to that and what that means for supplements. They're selling supplements. More men aren't going to be looking at things like long jack and Fedosia and Tribulus and all these trending herbs when they can fill out a survey online and get prescription Cialis, right? Why would you pick the herbs when you can get the real thing with a short survey? When it comes to test boosters and performance enhancing supplements, TRT is going to trump a lot of performance enhancing supplements in terms of how it feels for a lot of people. And I think those two things, the industry is going to have to start making decisions about what the crossover is going to look like and what the future is going to look like. The other area where I see, something might be coming, we're seeing this increased trend with functional foods that Quest is leading. I absolutely love it. But I talk to a lot of people about traveling overseas, and they always tell me, "Oh, I go to these Asian countries and I eat whatever I want and I lose weight. There's something wrong with the food in America, right? We always hear that there's something wrong with food in America, processed foods. I think part of it is self-accountability. Yes, America does have a lot of processed foods, and obviously eating out adds a lot of calories, but it's decision making. You can make the right choices to control your calorie count and control your health. It's just that we have a lot more bad choices here than elsewhere. So I think there's an accountability aspect to it, but there's certainly a lot of truth to the fact that, you can go out to eat or you can buy food on the go somewhere in another country and you have a difficult time finding unhealthy options. Whereas in America, it's very easy to find unhealthy options. So when it comes to functional foods, this mission that Quest and other brands like Legendary Foods that are sort of chasing after Quest are on with all these healthy alternatives for your favorite snacking options. Obviously, they're still more expensive. It excludes a lot of people from being able to take advantage of this. But when it comes to turning the tide on processed foods being detrimental to our health and what we can do in terms of making healthy choices to keep up, I think all these healthy alternatives, once they start to permeate the industry more, once they start to become more readily available, right? You go to any grocery store or drugstore and you see these functional alternatives like these protein cookies are becoming more and more available at every grocery location. I'm hoping more and more that, generations in the future will adapt to, okay, I'm going to bring home the functional cookies and the protein Pop Tarts and the protein chips for my kids and for my family as snacks versus the snacks that we have today. I would love for the day to come when a school vending machine isn't filled with 40 grams of sugar sodas and, high sugar, high fat snacks. It's got protein snacks and healthy alternatives as well. Because the industry is creating these things. They're just not creating them at a mass enough scale for it to be cheap enough to be viable. But if this trend continues, and I'm hoping it does, I see this as being an avenue for improving the health in daily households where they're bringing home Quest and Legendary as snacks and, big snack boxes for kids to grab and for people to grab on the go, to sort of turn the tide and where our obesity rates are going with adolescents and with families.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for a second. These things are still processed, are they not? I mean, a lot of these bars, you're talking about protein bars, things like that. Given the choice, is it better to go more natural if possible, or even though these are processed, they're still quite good or better for you than, let's say, going natural?
So 100% they are still processed. It does not change the fact that we are a processed food generation. But I'll be 100% honest with you. I can be a bit of a pessimist in people's ability to choose properly when comfort is optimized and when efficiency is optimized. And, we always talk about people eating healthier and choosing better and moving away from processed foods. But I honestly don't see that happening for the majority of the population. I still think that um, preparing healthy foods for yourself on your own, having the time to do that, having the money to do that, I still think that that's a luxury of higher income earning households. I mean, even these protein snacks that I'm talking about is going to be a luxury of higher income households for years to come. I'm hoping for the day that when it's mass enough so that when that lower income household or that person on the go is choosing a processed food, they can do something with protein, with nutrient density that's low in sugar and high in fiber versus something that's not. So yeah, you're 100% correct. This doesn't get America. My vision isn't America going away from processed foods, but it's my dream because I feel like it's the most realistic. I don't see Americans choosing other options and going away from what they choose now. I think that the fastest way for America to improving their health is not suddenly everyone having an epiphany. I think that's less likely. I think what is more likely if their existing options are simply replaced by higher fiber, lower sugar, lower calorie options.
It's not just them, it's also what's being offered to them, right? I mean, all these processed things, they increase shelf life and do a lot of things that allow people to actually make money and sell products. But so it's a matter of also choice. But I agree with that. I know what you're saying. I don't think the mind shift is going to happen that quickly. So if I had to say, that's what I think you're saying is, look, you're not going to take on the whole processed food battle completely. But if you can have processed food, you can have better processed food.
Think like Nabisco or any of these major companies, I don't think that they're suddenly just going to give up their business model,
Yeah,
right?
give up my crack and go have an apple, right? They're not going to do that.
Yeah, so I don't see that happening. But if a lot of these companies decide to produce some of these replacement type items on a mass scale, which will reduce the price when you increase the manufacturing of it, I think that goes a long way to reducing the calories and sugar intake that Americans are facing right now.
I want to go back to something you talked about Asia. I spent a lot of time in Asia, and perhaps you can explain this phenomenon where there are these people that are much skinnier than me, and often women, and they can out eat me like two or three times. They gain nothing. I'll eat like half of that, and I'll gain weight. So what's going on there?
Just came back from the Philippines, and I wish I had an explanation for you because I frequent Asia as well. Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam. I did Vietnam at the end of last year as well. And I don't know what it is. I mean, even like a lot of the street food that they eat is fried. What I do see, and anybody who frequents these countries has seen the research, can correct me if I'm wrong. Whereas in America, we have this high meal frequency. There's a much lower meal frequency in some of these countries. We're talking about people that have money have the luxury of eating 3 times a day in these countries, but most people in these countries are eating twice a day, once or twice a day. So that's one area where I see that's different. And then also the amount of manual labor involved in their daily jobs. A large portion of Americans get by in their workday sitting at a desk in front of a computer. A lot of people are discovering standing at their workspace or the work treadmill, walking while they're on their computer as a way to improve their daily movement. But a lot of these people that we see in Asian countries, the vast majority of their jobs involve manual labor. It's not sitting in front of a computer. So between their daily movement and the lack of meal frequency, easily see, people in Asian countries, in one sitting, they'll eat a ton, they'll out eat anyone. But as an American, we're going to eat two or three more times that day. And it's the frequency is not as high for some of these people.
Well, definitely. I mean, the portion sizes are definitely smaller here, but it's also kind of interesting. Is I don't know if you know this, but I've spent a lot of time in Thailand. In Thailand, they actually learn about nutrition at a very young age. So, regardless of kind of what level of education they have, I would say most still have the basics of, knowing their proteins, carbs, and fats, and that they need a balance of that, which, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but a lot of people don't know that. And, it makes a huge difference. And I've seen that. And they also do also have movement and exercise. I mean, they try to ensure that they do that. I mean, a lot of them can't afford even gym memberships and stuff. But as you know, I mean, the size of people in Asia is much skinnier and much smaller. It is amazing the difference that you see. But also going back to all this stuff, I mean, I think the huge area that's going to be really changing is, all these things that are processed and how it's affecting your gut biome. And I think that's going to change a lot of the understanding and what may happen eventually with processed foods.
Yeah, and that's my biggest fear, even with my, sort of like my vision of sort of like the healthy snacking replacing like the existing snacking. My concern with that is when we learn about the gut biome, what will that mean for artificial sweeteners, right, which are popular in a lot of the healthy snacking foods? What is it going to mean for, a lot of the processed ingredients that are used to make these foods lower calorie and lower carb? Because all that is great, especially the foods that are high in fiber. It looks great from a macronutrient and calorie standpoint, but what does it mean for your gut biome? I don't know. And, that could still be an issue in the long run.
I kind of have a simple rule for myself, do I trust man or nature? I'm going to go with nature. But interesting enough, like monk fruit is actually kind of an interesting thing, and sugar for monk fruit is quite interesting, but still a bit expensive. But I think that actually has some promise in terms of its characteristics, but also the fact it's still natural. You probably know more about it than I do, and perhaps you can explain what monk fruit and monk fruit sugar is to our listeners.
Unfortunately, I don't have the details on monk fruit. But what I can tell you is that just as opposed to the other sweeteners that are on the market, sucralose, those that are created, monk fruit being a natural extract that has a sweetness that is, hundreds of times greater than sugar. You have very low inclusion rates. You have sweetness that is not coming from something that is processed. And yeah, when it comes to sweeteners and replacement sweeteners, I foresee some of these natural sweeteners being better for the gut biome than maybe sucralose or some of the popular artificial alternatives that are on the market right now.
So tell me, what's in the future for you? What area of interest are you looking at that you think is something that's going to really change the way we eat and maybe even pursue healthcare?
I think for me, one of the areas, and unfortunately, I can't get too deep into it yet. It's something that we're pursuing in the retail world right now with the Vitamin Shop. But I'll just sort of touch on it. Just the awareness, as I mentioned previous, about the impact of health clinics, and sort of working with that machine to better the human health of the customer, right? So supplements, health clinics, finding a way to have those opportunities available to the customer. We see other companies getting involved in things like telemedicine, right? Providing some of these services to customers. So just in the future, I see easier access to doctors, to improving human health through doctors and through pharmaceuticals, and then the supplement industry sort of playing a role in improving human health as well, and working alongside this industry versus being, in battle with it, one versus the other, instead of one versus the other, them working together.
What's interesting though, medicine is so specialized, especially in the U.S., that a lot of times doctors they don't know nutrition.
I remember it was actually my mom's cancer doctor, her oncologist. I remember actually sitting in with him discussing, issues with my mom, and then him following up with me, about my mom, but then also, hey, what kind of diet can I get on to lose weight, right? That's coming from an oncologist. So I definitely see that as well.
Well, I'll give you a personal example. What happened with my mom? She suffered from breast cancer, And she had been diagnosed in 1998, but I was not told until 2013. And so when I found out, the doctor basically told me that your mom has stage 4 breast cancer that's metastasized everywhere except her vital organs. I mean, that's when I got introduced to the issue, right? So we were actually at Hopkins, and the oncologist said, you really need to talk to a nutritionist. And so I couldn't believe it, but the nutritionist that came was actually overweight. My dad and my sister kind of dismissed what she was saying just because of the visual, right? And I understand that. I mean, I kind of did too, but I still was listening. And she said something. My mom had gone from like 168 pounds down to 96. And I mean, that was just a lot. And so she said that people in your mom's condition will never gain weight. And I'm not sure why, but that just kind of, got under my skin. And I said, I got to look into this. So I actually went to a nutrition center for bodybuilders, and I talked to the guy, and he recommended a supplement called MRP from Core Nutritional. And it's just a perfect balance of carbs, fats, and proteins. And so I decided to make a shake out of it and throw in a bunch of other natural stuff, Greek yogurt, fruits, I mean, all this stuff. Because my mom was having a hard time eating, but she could drink. So I came up with this shake that gives about, I don't know, 800 calories each time she drank it. And one of the things that was happening is she became quite gaunt, and she didn't like looking in the mirror and seeing her bones. And that has a huge psychological effect as well, right? So she started taking this, but within a month she started feeling out. I got her up to 128 pounds from 96. And what I also realized what happened, again, this is I'm not a clinical trial or anything like this, but what actually I think happened to her, her tumor markers went from like 1,500, and you've been with cancer, so you know what I'm talking about. It came down to 100. What I realize now is I think a lot of times, unfortunately, people who suffer from cancer succumb not to the cancer, but to the lack of nutrition in their bodies to fight the cancer. And what happened with my mom is she actually ended up, I think, building her immune system, which is what they're looking at now, is basically, immunotherapy for cancer. And that's what helped her body actually bring down the tumor markers and slowed down the cancer, because she was losing all that weight because the cancer was actually consuming all of her calories.
And kind of going off of what you said for me personally, and again, I don't say this to make any recommendations to cancer patients or to suggest any cures. I was facing a situation where I had tachycardia, high inflammation in the body. I was interacting with my thyroid, and so my heart rate was constantly over 100 beats per minute. And between the tachycardia, sort of very limiting my movement, and just with my digestive system not working, you sort of like lose the will to eat. Half the foods that you eat, especially if they're high in fiber, they hurt your stomach. They hurt your intestines for days at a time, and so you just like lose the will to take in the nutrition that you need to help stay strong. And so I started losing weight, and I sort of did the same thing. I started taking my Inshore, making shakes out of it, getting greens powders. And when it came to exercising, I could only do so much. When I would move, my heart rate would jump up. And so I'd have to wait 3 or 4 minutes to move again. But yeah, I would lift something, I'd work on my computer, heart rate monitor would say my heart rate would go down. I would move a little bit again. And between those two things, I was these numbers are all going to sound good because I was already a bigger guy, but I started out at around 235, and during treatment I got down to about 170, which is still not bad for someone who's 6'1". That's actually a good weight. But for me, at 170, having lost that much muscle mass, I was like a twig. And so I got back up to around 200 pounds during treatment, by just changing my nutrition, looking into seeing what I could do with a liquid diet, and just finding ways to move.
Yeah, and in my mom's case, I mean, the nutrition change definitely helped. So as I told you, I got the news in 2013, and she ended up surviving until 2020 with stage 4 breast cancer that's metastasized everywhere. And she was still able to, and she maintained around 125 pounds in weight. But she did stick with that, the shake that we'd come up with, and it definitely made a big difference. So, and that's when I definitely learned. I mean, nutrition is such a huge part as well as sleep, and obviously just movement alone. So as we wrap up, there's a question I always want to ask my guests, and that is, Dustin, if you could have lunch or dinner with anyone in the healthcare, nutrition, supplements, whatever, who would it be and why?
This is probably going to be a bit more of a generic response, but I think it would probably be Andrew Huberman. I would love to choose maybe somebody a little bit less known, but I think the reason why for me is I started out in formulations, but I've gotten so big into brand strategy, marketing strategy, the social aspects of human health. It's not just about the right ingredients and the right nutrition anymore, but how does it affect people socially? How do people view it socially? How do you reach people about it? And somebody like Andrew Huberman has been in this space where, he has had to go on different popular and social podcasts to broaden and expand upon his own brand, right? So he's got to go on podcasts with comedians and with mainstream media outlets and sort of introduce them to the world of, human science, how the brain works, how behavior works, and how supplement works. And so having bridged that gap and having had all these interactions, I feel like he would be a very interesting person to speak to since, I'm starting to get in the same realm where, okay, having a great product is just the entry point. It's really how do you reach people with it and, what's the strategy behind it? And someone like that who's talked to so many people and been on so many podcasts and had so many interesting conversations, it would not only be cool to sort of pick his brain and sort of go down the rabbit hole with some of these conversations, some of these topics, which would be really cool. But also to, get feedback from him on all these interactions he's had with on all these podcasts with all these people and how he sort of views people adapting to learning more about nutrition and where he thinks the industry is going. I mean, you could talk to a guy like that for hours for sure.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned quite a bit, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with moving forward.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com and make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.